Welcome to the 1,000 Nights and 1 Night. Now, when it was the 163rd night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the jeweller continued. So I abode with him that night, conversing with him till the morning morrowed, when I prayed the dawn prayers, and going out from him returned to my house. Hardly had I settled down when the damsel came up and saluted me, and I returned her salutation, and told her what had passed between myself and Ali bin Bakkar. And she said, Know that the Caliph hath left us, and there is no one in our place, and it is safer for us and better. Replied I, Sooth thou sayest, yet is it not like my other house, which is both fitter and surer for us. And the slave girl rejoined, Be it as thou seest fit. I am now going to my lady, and will tell her what thou sayest, and acquaint her with all thou hast mentioned. So she went away and sought her mistress, and laid the project before her, and presently returned and said to me, It is to be as thou sayest, so make us ready the place and expect us. Then she took out of her breast pocket a purse of dinars, and gave this message, My lady saluteth thee, and saith to thee, Take this, and provide therewith what the case requireth. But I swore that I would accept naught of it. So she took the purse, and returning it to her mistress, told her, He would not receive the money, but gave it back to me. No matter, answered Shams al-Nahar. As soon as the slave girl was gone, continued the jeweller, I arose and betook myself to my other house, and transported thither all that was needful by ways of vessels and furniture and rich carpets, and I did not forget china vases and cups of glass and gold and silver, and I made ready meat and drink required for the occasion. When the damsel came and saw what I had done, it pleased her, and she bade me fetch Ali bin Bakkar. But I said, None shall bring him save thou. Accordingly she went to him, and brought him back perfectly dressed, and looking his best. I met him and greeted him, and then seated him upon the divan, befitting his condition, and set before him sweet-scented flowers and vases of china and vari-colored glass. Then I set on a tray of many-tinted meats, such as broaden the breast with their sight, and sat talking with him and diverting him, whilst the slave girls went away, and was absent till after sundown prayers, when she returned with Shams al-Nahar, attended by 2 maids and none else. As soon as she saw Ali bin Bakkar, and he saw her, he rose and embraced her, and she and on her side embraced him, and both fell to the ground. They lay for a whole hour insensible. Then coming to themselves, they began mutually to complain of the pains of separation. Thereupon they drew near to each other, and sat talking charmingly, softly, tenderly. After which they somewhat perfumed themselves, and fell to thanking me for what I had done for them. Quoth I, Have ye mind for food? Yes, quoth they. So I set before them a small matter of food, and they ate till they were satisfied, and then washed their hands. After which I led them to another sitting room, and brought them wine. So they drank, and drank deep, and inclined to each other. And presently Shams al-Nahar said to me, O my master, complete thy kindness by bringing us a lute or other instrument of mirth and music, that the measure of our joy may be fully fulfilled. I replied, On my head and eyes, and rising brought her a lute, which she took and tuned. Then laying it in her lap, she touched it with mastery touch, at once exciting to sadness and changing sorrow to gladness. After which she recited these couplets. My sleeplessness would show I love to bide on wake, and would my leanness prove that sickness is my make? And tears, floods course down the cheeks, they only scald, when I knew union shall disunion overtake. Then she went on to sing the choicest and most affecting poesy to many and various modes, till our senses were bewitched, and the very room danced with excess of delight and surprise at her sweet singing. And neither thought nor reason was left in us. When she sat a while, and the cup had gone around amongst us, the damsel took the lute, and sang a lively measure. And these were the couplets she sang. My love a meeting promised me, and kept it faithfully. one night, as many as I shall count in number and degree. O night of joyance fate vouchsafed to faithful lovers tway, uncaring for the railer loon and all his company. My lover lay the night with me and clipped me with his right, while I with left embraced him, a faint for ecstasy, and hugged him to my breast and sucked the sweet wine of his lips, full savouring the honey draught the honey man sold to me. Whilst we were thus drowned in the sea of gladness, continued the jeweller, behold, there came to us a little maid, trembling, and said, O my lady, look how you may go away, for the folk have found you out and have surrounded the house, and we know not the cause of this. When I heard her words, I rose startled, and lo, in rushed a slave girl who cried, Calamity hath come upon you. At the same moment, the door was burst open, and there rushed in us 10 men masked in kerchiefs, with hangers in their hands and swords by their sides, and as many more beheld them. When I saw this, the world was straitened on me for all its wideness, and I looked to the door, but saw no issue. So I sprang from the terrace into the house of one of my neighbors, and there hid myself. Thence I found that folk had entered my lodgings, and were making a mighty hubbub, and I concluded that the Caliph had got wind of us, and had sent his chief of the watch to seize us and bring us before him. So I abode, confounded, and ceased not remaining in my place without any possibility of quitting it till midnight. And presently the housemaster arose, for he had heard me moving, and he feared with exceeding great fear of me. So he came forth from his room with drawn brand in hand, and made at me, saying, Who is this in my house? Quoth I am thy neighbor, the jeweller. And he knew me, and retired. Then he fetched a light, and coming up to me said, O my brother, indeed, that which hath befallen thee this night is no light matter to me. I replied, Oh, my brother, tell me who is in my house, and entered it breaking it in my door, for I fled to thee not knowing what was to do. He answered, Of truth, the robbers who attacked our neighbors yesterday, and slew such as one, and took his goods, saw thee on the same day bringing furniture into this house. So they broke in upon thee, and stole thy goods, and slew thy guest. Then we arose, pursued the jeweller, and I and he, and repaired to my house, which we found empty, without a stick remaining in it. So I was confounded at the case, and said to myself, As for the gear, I care not about its loss, albeit I borrowed part of the stuff from my friends, and it hath come to my grief. Yet is there no harm in that, for they know my excuse in the plunder of my property and the pillage of my place. But as for Ali bin Bakkar and the Caliph's favourite concubine, I fear lest their case get bruited about, and this cause the loss of my life. So I turned to my neighbour, and I said to him, Thou art my brother, and my neighbour, and wilt cover my nakedness. What then dost thou advise me to do? The man answered, What I counsel thee to do is to keep quiet and wait. For they who entered thy house and took thy goods have murdered the best men of a party from the palace of the caliphate, and have killed not a few of the watchmen. The government officers and guards are now in quest of them on every road, and happily they will hit upon them, whereby thy wish will come about without effort of thy own. The jeweller, hearing these words, returned to his own house, that wherein he dwelt. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 164th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when the jeweller heard these words, he returned to his other house wherein he dwelt, and said to himself, Indeed, this that hath befallen me is what Abu al-Hasan feared, and from which he fled to Basra. When Abu al-Hasan feared and from it, and fled to Basra, now I have fallen into it. Presently, the pillage of his pleasure house was noised abroad among all the folk, and they came to him from all sides and places, some exulting in his misfortune, and others excusing him and condoling with his sorrow, whilst he bewailed himself to them, and for grief neither ate meat nor drank drink. And as for Sat, repenting him of what he had done, behold, one of his servants came in to him and said, There is a person at the door who asketh for thee, and I know him not. The jeweller went forth to him and saluted him, who was a stranger, and the man whispered to him, I have somewhat to say between our two selves. Thereupon he brought him in and asked him, What hast thou to tell me? Quoth the man, Come with me to thine other house. And the jeweler inquired, Dost thou then know my other house? Replied the other, I know all about thee, and I know that also whereby Allah will dispel thy dolours. So I said to myself, continued the jeweler, I will go with him whither he will. And he went out and he walked on till we came to our second house. And when the man saw it, he said to me, It is without door or doorkeeper, and we cannot possibly sit in it. So come thou with me to another place. Then the man continued, passing from stead to stead, and I with him, till night overtook us. Yet I put no question to him of the matter in hand, and we ceased not to walk on till we reached the open country. He kept saying, Follow me, and quickened his pace to a trot, whilst I trotted about after him, heartening my heart to go on until we reached the river, where he took boat with me, and the boatman rowed us over the other bank. Then he landed from the boat, and I landed after him. And he took my hand, and he led me to a street which I had never entered in all my days, nor do I know in what quarter it was. Presently the man stopped at the door of a house, and opening it, entered, and made me enter with him. After which he locked the door with an iron padlock, and led me along the vestibule till he brought me in the presence of 10 men, who were as though they were one and the same man, they being brothers. We saluted them, continued the jeweler, and they returned our greetings and bade us to be seated, and so we sat down. Now, I was like to die for excess of weariness, but they brought me rose water and sprinkled it on my face, after which they gave me sherbet to drink, and set before me food, whereof some of them ate with me. Quoth I to myself, were there aught harmful in the food, they would not eat with me. So I ate, and when we had washed our hands, each of us returned to his place. Then they asked me, Dost thou know us? And I answered, No, nor in my life have I ever seen you. Nay, I know not even him who brought me hither. Said they, Tell us thy tidings, and lie not at all. Replied I, Know then that my case is wondrous, and my affair marvellous, but wot ye anything about me? They rejoined, Yes. It was we took thy goods yesternight, and carried off thy friend, and her who was singing to him. Quoth I, Allah let down his veil over you. Where be my friend, and she who was singing to him? They pointed with their hands to one side, and replied, Yonder. But by Allah, O our brother, the secret of their case is known to none save to thee. From that time we brought the twain hither up to this day, we have not looked upon them, nor questioned them of their condition, seeing them to be persons of rank and dignity. Now this and this only it was that hindered our killing them. So tell us the truth of their case, and thou shalt be assured of thy safety and of theirs. When I heard this, continued the jeweler, I almost died of fright and horror, and I said to them, Know ye, O my brethren, that if generosity were lost, it would not be found save with you. And had I a secret which I feared to reveal, none but your breasts would conceal it. And I went on, exaggerating their praises in this fashion, till I saw the frankness and readiness to speak out would profit me more than concealing facts. So I told them all that had betided me to the very end of the tale. When they heard it, they said, And this young man, Ali Bakkar's son, and this lady Sham al-Nahar? I replied, Yes. Now this was grievous to them, and they rose and made their excuses to the two, and then they said to me, Of what we took from thy house, part is spent, but here is what is left of it. So speaking, they gave me back most of my goods, and they engaged to return them to the places in my house, and to restore to me the rest as soon as they could. My heart was set at ease till they split into 2 parties, one with me and the other against me, and we fared forth from that house, and such was my case. But as regards Ali bin Bakkar and Shams al-Nahar, they were well nigh dying for excess of fear, when I went up to them, and saluting them asked, What happened to the damsel and the 2 maids, and where be they gone? And they answered only, We know nothing of them. Then we walked on, and stinted not till we came to the river bank where the bark lay, and we all boarded it, for it was the same which had brought me over on the day before. The boatman rowed us to the other side, but hardly had we landed and taken seat on the bank to the other side, when a troop of horse swooped down on us like eagles, and surrounded us on all sides and places, whereupon the robbers with us sprang up in haste like vultures, and the boat put back for them, and took them and the boatman, and pushed off to midstream, leaving us on the river bank, unable to move or to stand still. Then the chief horseman said to me, "Whence be ye?" And we were perplexed for an answer, but I said, continuing as the jeweler, "Those ye saw with us are rogues, we know not them. As for us, we are singers, and they intended taking us to sing for them, nor could we get free of them save by subtlety and soft words. So on this occasion they let us go, their works being such as you have seen." But they looked at Shams al-Nahar and Ali bin Bakkar, and said to them, "Thou hast not spoken sooth, but if thy tale be true, tell us who ye are, and whence ye are, and what be your place, and in what quarters you dwell." I knew not what to answer then, but Shams al-Nahar sprang up, and approaching the captain of the horsemen, spoke with him privily, whereupon he dismounted from his steed, and setting her on horseback, took the bridle, and began to lead his beast. And the two of his men did the like with the youth, Ali bin Bakkar, and it was the same with myself. The commandant of the troop ceased not faring on with us till they reached a certain part of the river bank, when he sang out in some barbarous jargon, and there came to us a number of men with 2 boats. Then the captain embarked us in one of them, and he with us, whilst the rest of the men put off in the other, and rowed on with us till we arrived at the palace of the caliphate, where Shams al-Nahar landed. And all the while we endured the agonies of death for excess of fear. And they ceased not fearing, till they came to a place whence there was a way to our quarter. Here we landed, and walked on, escorted by some of the horsemen, till we came to Ali bin Bakkar's house, and when we entered it, our escort took leave of us, and went their way. We abode there, unable to stir from the place, and not knowing the difference between morning and evening. And in such case we continued till the dawn of the next day. And when again nightfall came, I came to myself, and saw Ali bin Bakkar and the women and the men of his household weeping over him, for he was stretched out without sense or motion. Some of them came to me, and thoroughly arousing me, said, "Tell me, what hath befallen our son? And say, how came he in this plight?" Replied I, "O folk, hearken to me." And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased saying her permitted say. And when it was the 65th night, she said, "It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the jeweler answered them, O folk, hearken to my words, and give me no trouble and annoyance, but be patient, and he will come to you and tell you his tale for himself. And I was hard upon them, and made them afraid of a scandal between me and them. But as we were thus, behold, Ali bin Bakkar moved on his carpet bed, whereat his friends rejoiced, and the stranger folk withdrew from him. But his people forbade me to go away. Then they sprinkled rose water on his face, and he presently revived, and sensed the air. Whereupon they questioned him of his case, and he essayed to answer them, but his tongue could not speak forthright, and he signed to them to let him go home. So they let him go. And I went forth hardly crediting my escape, and returned to my own house, supported by 2 men. When they saw me thus, they rose up and set to shrieking and slapping their faces, and I signed to them with my hand to be silent, and they were silent. Then the 2 men went their way, and I threw myself down on my bed, where I lay the rest of the night, and I awoke not till the forenoon, when I found people gathered round me, and saying, "What calamity befell thee, and what evil with its mischief did befall thee?" Quoth I, "Bring me somewhat to drink." So they brought me drink, and I drank it, that, and I said to them, "What happened, happened." Thereupon they went away, and I made my excuses to my friends and asked if any of the goods that had been stolen from my other house had been returned, and they answered yes. Some of them had come back by token that a man entered and threw them down within the doorway, and we saw him not. So I comforted myself, and I abode in my place 2 days, unable to rise and leave it. And presently I took courage and went to the bath, for I was worn out with fatigue and troubled in mind for Ali bin Bakkar and Shams al-Nahar, because I had no news of them all this time, and could neither go to Ali's house, nor out of fear of my life take my rest in mine own. And I repented to Almighty Allah of what I had done, and praised him for my safety. Presently my fancy suggested to me to go to such and such a place, and see the folk, and solace myself. So I went on foot to the cloth market, and I sat a while with a friend of mine there. When I rose to go, I saw a man standing over against me, so I looked at her, and lo, it was Shams al-Nahar's slave girl. When I saw her, the world grew dark in my eyes, and I hurried on. She followed me, but I was seized with affright, and I fled from her. And whenever I looked at her, a trembling came upon me, while she pursued me, saying, "Stop, that I may tell thee somewhat." But I heeded her not, and never ceased walking till I reached a mosque, and she entered after me. I prayed a 2-bow prayer, after which I turned to her, and sighing said, "What dost thou want?" She asked me how I did, and I told her all that had befallen us, and Ali bin Bakkar, and besought her for news of herself. She answered, "Know that when I saw the robbers break open thy door and rush in, I was in sore terror, for I doubted not but they were in the Caliph's officers, and would seize me and my mistress, and we should perish forthwith. So I fled the roofs, I and the maids, and casting ourselves down the high place, came upon some people with whom we took refuge. And they received us and brought us to the palace of the Caliphate, where we arrived in the sorriest of plights. We concealed our case and abode on coals of fire till nightfall, when I opened the river gate, and calling the boatman who had carried us that night before, said to him, I know not what has become of my mistress, so take me in the boat, that we may go seek her on the river. Happily I shall chance on some news of her. Accordingly, he took me into the boat, and went about with me, and ceased not wending till midnight, when I spied a bark, making towards the water gate, with one man rowing, and the other standing up, and a woman lying prostrate between them twain. And they rowed on till they reached the shore, when the woman landed, and I looked at her, and behold, it was Shams al-Nahar. Thereupon I got out, and I joined her, dazed for joy to see her, and after having lost all hopes of finding her alive. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased saying her permitted say. Now, when it was the 166th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the slave girl went on telling the jeweler. I was dazed for joy to see her, after having lost all hopes of finding her alive. When I came up to her, she bade me give the man who had brought her thither 1,000 gold pieces, and we carried her in, I and the 2 maids, and laid her on her bed, where she passed that night in a sorely troubled state. And when morning dawned, I forbade the women and eunuchs to go into her, or even to draw near her for that whole day. But on the next she revived, and somewhat recovered, and I found her as if she had come out of her grave. I sprinkled rose water upon her face, and changed her clothes, and washed her hands and feet. Nor did I cease to coax her till I brought her a little bit to eat, and a little bit to drink, though she had no mind to do any of that such matter. As soon as she had breathed the fresh air, and strength began to return her, I took to upbraiding her, saying, O my lady, consider and have pity on thyself. Thou seest what hath betided us. Surely enough and more than enough of evil hath befallen thee, for indeed thou hast been nigh upon death. She said, By Allah, O good damsel, in sooth death would be easier to me than that which betided me. For it seemed as though I would be slain, and no power could save me. When the robbers took us from the jeweler's house, they asked me, Who mayest thou be? In hearing my answer, I am a singing girl. They believed me. Then they turned to Ali bin Bakkar and made inquiries about him. And who art thou, and what is thy condition? Whereto he replied, I am of the common kind. So they took us and carried us along without resisting to their abode, and we hurried on with them for excess of fear. But when they had us set down and them in the house, they looked hard at me, and seeing the clothes I wore and my necklaces and jewelry, believed not my account of myself, and said to me, Of a truth, these necklaces belong to no singing girl, so be soothfast and tell us the truth of thy case. I returned them no answer whatsoever, saying in my mind, Now will they slay me for the sake of my apparel and ornaments. And I spoke not a word. Then the villains turned to Ali bin Bakkar, asking, And thou, who art thou, and whence art thou? For thy semblance seemeth not as that of a common kind. But he was silent, and we ceased not to keep our counsel and to weep till Allah softened the rogues' hearts to pity. And they said to us, Who is the owner of this house wherein ye were? We answered, Such, and one, the jeweler. Whereupon quoth one of them, I know him right well, and I wot the other houses where he liveth, and I will engage to bring him to you this very hour. Then they agreed to set me in a place by myself, and Ali bin Bakkar in a place by himself, and said to us, Be at rest, ye twain, and fear not lest your secret be divulged. You are safe from us. Meanwhile their comrade went away, and returned with the jeweler, who made known to them our case, and we joined company with them. After which a man of the band fetched a bark, wherein they embarked us all three, and rowing us over the river, landed us with scant ceremony on the opposite bank, and went their ways. Thereupon came a horse patrol, and asked us who we were. So I spoke with the captain of the watch, and said to him, I am Shams al-Nahar, the caliph's favorite. I had drunken strong wine, and went out to visit certain of my acquaintances of the wives of the wazirs, when yonder rogues came upon me, and laid hold of me, and brought me to this place. But when they saw you, they fled as fast as they could. I met these men with them, so they do escort me to the place of safety, and I will requite thee as I am well able to do. When the captain of the watch heard my speech, he knew me, and alighting mounted me on his horse, and in like manner did two of the men from Ali bin Bakkar. So I spoke to her, continued the handmaid, and blamed her doings, and bade her beware, and said to her, O my lady, have some care for thy life. But she was angered at my words, and cried out at me accordingly. I left her, and came forth in quest of thee, but found thee not, and dared not to go to the house of Ali bin Bakkar. So stood watching for thee, that I might ask thee of him, and wot how it goes with him. And I pray thee of thy favour to take of me some money, for thou hast doubtless borrowed from thy friends part of the gear, and as it is lost, behoveth thee to make it good with folk. I replied, To hear is to obey. Go on. And I walked with her till we reached near my house, when she said to me, Wait here till I come back to thee. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. And so do I cease my tale for the day, till it be morrow.